At a time of frequent international conflicts, China advocated peace and encouraged mediation. We practiced solutions to pressing issues with Chinese characteristics, including initiating the establishment of the Group of Friends of Peace for Ukraine on the United Nations platform, continuously contributing to peace in the world. At a time of global development challenges, China empowers and enhances global development, having mobilized over $23 billion USD in funding. It has launched more than 1,800 cooperation projects, held over 10,000 capacity-building training sessions for developing countries, training over 200,000 talents of various types, and has strongly supported the development aspirations of the Global South. The development aspirations of the Global South. In the face of major public crises, China has gone to great lengths. After fully supporting the 3 West African countries in fighting the Ebola epidemic in 2015, China is willing to provide assistance to recent outbreaks. Provide as much assistance as possible to Congo and Ukraine amidst the Ebola outbreaks. At this moment, the Chinese medical team is steadfastly on the ground, fighting side by side with African brothers on the front line of epidemic prevention.
Mr. President, water must never be weaponized. Treaties must always be honored, and disputes must be resolved through adherence to the international law, dialogue and justice, and the implementation of relevant Security Council resolutions. The same fidelity to the Charter is required in Palestine. There can be no durable peace in the Middle East while occupation, collective punishment, forced displacement, and illegal expansion of settlements continue. The situation in Gaza and the West Bank is becoming increasingly volatile and demands our continuous attention. The momentum generated by the New York Conference on Two-State Solution and the Gaza peace plan presented by President Donald Trump, endorsed by Security Council Resolution 2803, must be sustained till its logical conclusion. Pakistan reaffirms its unwavering support for the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and to an independent, viable, contiguous state of Palestine based on pre-1967 borders with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. Mr. President, the crisis of the international system today is not caused by absence of principles. The principles are there and have been clearly spelled out and globally agreed. The crisis lies in their selective application. When sovereignty is defended in one case but disregarded in another, the chapter and the charter of UN is weakened. When occupation is condemned in one region but tolerated and even supported in another, justice is diminished. When Security Council resolutions are invoked selectively, the credibility of this council is eroded. When powerful states act outside the law, smaller states are left no wonder whether the Charter protects all nations equally.
Indeed, since the founding of the UN, Colombia has participated in and contributed to processes for resolving highly complex conflicts, including our own. Never in these 80 years, we have doubted that dialogue is the key tool for addressing differences and for moving towards building consensus, and that the UN is the most suitable space to achieve understandings between nations. Colombia is convinced that this is not the time to abandon these foundations. Finally, we make a call to all member states to act in good faith, fulfill their obligations in accordance with the Charter, and avoid double standards. Only through mutual respect, cooperation, and shared responsibility can we preserve the achievements of the post-World War II international order and build a future of peace, development, and prosperity for all.
No nation, however powerful, has the right to unilaterally render the world unsafe. Today, that covenant is under strain. A divided Security Council is deepening global uncertainty. Crises from Gaza to Ukraine have exposed persistent divisions, including vetoes that have hindered necessary interventions. Across Africa, from Sudan to the Sahel to the Great Lakes, conflicts continue to worsen and drive displacement. What this council increasingly lacks is not rules or principles, but the political will to apply them consistently and impartially, as speakers before me have mentioned. Liberia knows the value of a united and decisive council. When our state collapsed, United Nations peacekeeping created the space for peace, for dialogue, reconciliation, and the rebuilding of our institutions.
At the heart of these crises, Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz has caused disruptions in energy markets, critical passages, and a halt in supplies. Food and medicine, and disrupted international trade, causing the global economy losses estimated in trillions of dollars. This has led many countries to take emergency measures to protect consumers. And the Kingdom of Bahrain emphasizes the necessity for the Islamic Republic of Iran to comply with its international commitments in accordance with international law and the principles of good neighborliness, and we call on it to adhere to Security Council Resolution 28-117, which was supported by 136 countries, and to the Resolution Human Rights Council Resolution 61-1, which was adopted by consensus, ensuring freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz and other international waterways, and preventing imposing tariffs, as well as ceasing support for proxies and armed militias, ending destabilizing activities, and thus the effectiveness of the valiant armed forces in the Kingdom of Bahrain and the brotherly countries in confronting Iranian attacks. We affirm the legitimate rights of the affected countries to redress and compensation. In this context, the Kingdom of Bahrain welcomes the tangible progress made in the negotiations between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran through efforts appreciated by the brotherly Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and the advanced stages it has reached, paving the way for the signing of a memorandum of understanding establishing lasting peace in the region, and we highly value the leading role of His Excellency President Donald Trump and his sincere will in promoting peace, and the consultations he has conducted with the leaders of the region's countries, as it embodies the approach of effective diplomacy as a means to resolve conflicts. We call for the continuation of this path in a way that adequately addresses all the fundamental issues in this conflict.
The United States helped found the United Nations after World War II to prevent global conflicts and promote international peace and security. We remain deeply invested in that mission today. Some 80 years later, however, the United Nations has not fully realized the Charter's lofty goal of saving succeeding generations from the scourge of war. That includes the Security Council itself, a body charged with maintaining international peace and security. Since January 2025, the United States has taken decisive and significant action to address these shortcomings. Over the last 16 months, the United States has led efforts to get the UN back to its basic mission of maintaining international peace and security. In practice, that includes streamlining the bureaucracy, eliminating duplication, and ensuring accountability for a more effective UN. Under President Trump's leadership, U.S. foreign policy is no longer beholden to a network of international institutions that are often driven by transnationalism that seeks to dissolve individual state sovereignty. Instead, we are focused on results. In the Security Council, we are putting these words into action. I will highlight a few examples. First, Gaza. When the Trump administration came in, the war was raging. Hostages, including Americans, were still in tunnels, and there was no credible path to peace. In response, President Trump crafted the 20-point comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. In November, under U.S. leadership, the Council endorsed that framework via its Resolution 2803, through which it welcomed the Board of Peace. It also established the basis for an international stabilization force, the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, and a World Bank-managed reconstruction fund financed largely by regional partners. Turning to the Strait of Hormuz, the United States is working closely with partners in the region, and notably with Bahrain, here in the Council, to reestablish the ability of states to freely navigate through this critical waterway. This work resulted in the adoption of Security Council Resolution 2817 in March that condemned Iran for egregious attacks against GCC countries and Jordan, and in the process garnered more than 130 co-sponsors, a Security Council record. We regret that this Council was unable to endorse a second resolution on the Strait of Hormuz. That vetoed resolution would have sent a clear message, namely that the Security Council will not tolerate Iran's continuing violations of international law and disruptions to maritime security. Those responsible for preventing this Council from acting claim that their obstruction helped create conditions for the U.S.-Iranian ceasefire announced on April 11th. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Послевоенный миропорядок не раз проходил проверку на прочность. Когда-то казалось, что самая большая опасность – это противостояние непримиримых идеологий в годы Холодной войны. Однако шли годы, биполярная система ушла в прошлое, и сегодня…
The post-war world order has repeatedly been tested for its strength. At one time, it seemed that the greatest danger was the confrontation of irreconcilable ideologies during the Cold War years. However, as years passed, the bipolar system became a thing of the past, and today we have approached a global catastrophe, closer than ever, witnessing not only the widespread violation of the Charter, but also the questioning of its value and the necessity of compliance. Instead, a group of countries, mainly Western ones, is offering us some sort of order based on rules that they themselves invent and present. Then these so-called rules are being presented as universal. Today, the disregard for the UN Charter, this cornerstone document, has reached its peak. In the pursuit to maintain their dominant positions in the world, Western elites have lost all restraint in using crude, forceful methods to advance their political and economic interests. They continue to pursue resources and influence. They are expanding NATO-centric alliances into new areas in Asia, directly threatening the undermining of collective security. With the help of controlled organizations and media, they divert the attention of the international community from the real root causes of the conflict, generating double standards that confuse those who seek to responsibly adhere to charters. So T. Vassily Nebenzia, permanent representative of Russia to the United Nations, Russian. The era of cooperation in Europe brought prosperity, a part of which was the unification of Germany. However, short-sighted politicians in Europe decided to be cunning. They decided that cooperation disgrace. This is not their method, that it's better to use blackmail and pressure, that they need to seize lands in the East again, this time under the guise of NATO and European Union expansion. These imperial projects are moving eastward, not asking the people, seizing countries. They rely on bribing elites and color revolutions. But today, the European elite decided to drop the masks and bet on undisguised military force, actively engaging in the crisis in Ukraine, including unprecedented arms supplies. As we already mentioned at one of these Security Council meetings, Germany does not shy away from fueling the conflict with weapons in the area, including new technologies. On April 22nd, the German defense minister decided to make his country's aggressive plans public. The main points: were published. The documents outlining the strategic directions of Germany's armed forces, indicating that this country intends to become the main military power in Europe and take responsibility for its security. This is stated in this document. The goal of an unprecedented buildup of armed forces and weapons is proclaimed. Moreover, Germany, together with France, establishes a certain high-level nuclear steering group. It proclaims Germany begins to move its military presence eastward by deploying a contingent to Lithuania. The goals and actions announced by Germany contradict the Treaty on the Final Settlement with respect to Germany of 1990, which serves as the basis the unification of this country, which imposes very specific limitations on Germany's armed forces, as well as a prohibition on possessing nuclear weapons. The same treaty states that from the territory of Germany, there should originate only peace. Let us ask ourselves whether the remilitarization of Germany and a policy of confrontation brings prosperity to Europe comparable to that which this region achieved during the era of cooperation with the USSR and Russia. From the 1970s to the 2000s. In our opinion, the answer is obvious, and it is expressed not only in the indicators of economic development. Mr. Chairman, other countries are also engaged in remilitarization. Countries falling under Article 107 of the UN Charter. For instance, Japan is developing its armed forces and arms supplies, openly discussing amendments to its constitution, which impose restrictions in this area following the Second World. The war are looking for pretexts to rewrite its results, and no one should be deceived by their rhetoric. This is a very dangerous trend that deserves the attention of the entire international community. Mr. Chairman, throughout the around the world, the situation is teetering on the edge of war and peace. Our eyes are anxiously turned to the Middle East, to the warlike rhetoric towards Cuba. We are convinced that this path leads nowhere. We must help each other avoid a global crisis and restore the UN's role as an honest broker. However, to start, as in the past, it is necessary to once again affirm a consensus on the basic parameters of international cooperation.